Dr. Elena Martinez wiped the dust from her hands and stared at the glowing screen in disbelief. She had been working in the ruins of the Zephyrian homeworld for 6 months now, carefully translating their final data records. What she found made her stomach turn cold. The message was clear, written in the elegant script of a dying civilization. To those who come after us, beware the third planet of the yellow star they call Sol. The creatures there guard something far worse than themselves. We learned too late. Do not make our mistake. Elena pushed back from her workstation and rubbed her tired eyes. This was the 4th time she had read the same warning. The 4th time she had checked her translation software. The 4th time she had hoped she was wrong. But she wasn't wrong. The archaeological station hummed quietly around her as the artificial gravity kept her feet planted on the metal floor. Through the observation windows, the dead planet below showed no signs of the great civilization that once lived there. The Zephyrians had been gone for over 2,000 years. Their cities turned to dust, and their people nothing more than bones scattered. Across a barren world, Elena's hands shook as she reached for her communication device. She needed to contact Captain Jake Sullivan immediately. This discovery was too important to keep to herself. Captain Sullivan to Archaeology Lab 7. She spoke into the device. Within minutes, the lab door slid open with a soft hiss. Jake Sullivan stepped inside, his military uniform crisp despite the long hours they had all been working. His brown hair was starting to show gray at the temples, and his face carried the weathered look of someone who had spent years in deep space. "What's got you so worked up, Elena?" Jake asked, moving to stand beside her workstation. "You sounded pretty shaken on the comm." Elena gestured to the screen. "Read this translation. Tell me what you think." Jake leaned forward and read the Zephyrian text that had been converted to English. His expression grew serious as he finished. "This is talking about Earth." "That's what it says. The third planet of Sol. That's us, Jake." Jake straightened up and crossed his arms. "Could be a coincidence. Maybe they're talking about some other system with a yellow star." "I thought the same thing," Elena said. She pulled up another file on her screen. "Until I checked our database of other archaeological finds." The new document appeared, showing a list of civilizations and their final records. Elena pointed to specific entries highlighted in red. The Kelthani Empire, destroyed 3,000 years ago. Their last transmission mentioned the guardians of the third world who watch over ancient evil. She scrolled down to another entry. The Varvathian Republic, gone for 1,500 years. Their final data core contained a warning about the primitive species of Sol 3 who unknowingly stand watch over that which must never wake. Jake's face grew pale as Elena continued down the list. The ancient Nexari, dead for over 5,000 years. They left stone tablets warning future explorers to avoid the yellow star's children, for they guard the sleeper that would end all things. "How many?" Jake asked quietly. 17 different civilizations, Jake. 17. All separated by thousands of years and thousands of light years of space. All leaving the same warning about Earth. Elena pulled up a star map, showing the locations of all the dead civilizations. Red dots appeared scattered across a section of the galaxy, with Earth marked in blue at the center. "Look at this pattern. Every single one of these civilizations was more advanced than us. They had faster-than-light travel, energy weapons, and technology we can barely understand. But they're all gone now, and they all left warnings about us." Jake stared at the map for a long moment. What kind of warnings? What do they think we're guarding? "That's the strange part," Elena said, bringing up another file. "None of them are specific about what we're supposedly protecting. They just say it's something worse than humanity itself. Something that must never be awakened." "This doesn't make sense," Jake said, shaking his head. "Humans have only been in space for a few hundred years. These civilizations were exploring the galaxy when we were still learning to make fire. How could they know anything about us? Elena turned to face him directly. That's what scares me, Jake. How could they know about us before we even existed as a spacefaring species? And what could possibly be on Earth that's worse than anything humans could do? Jake walked to the observation window and looked out at the dead planet below. The Zephyrians had been a peaceful species, according to all their records. They had never been involved in galactic wars or conflicts. They had simply been exploring and learning about the universe when something had wiped them out completely. "Have you told anyone else about this?" he asked. "Not yet. I wanted to be sure before I reported it to the Archaeological Council." "Good. Keep it that way for now." Jake turned back to Elena. "I want you to double-check everything. Run the translations again. Verify the dates and locations. Make sure we're not missing something obvious." Elena nodded. "I've already done that 3 times. The data is solid. Then do it a 4th time. And a 5th if necessary." Jake's voice was firm, but not unkind. "Because if you're right about this, it changes everything we thought we knew about humanity's place in the galaxy." As Jake left the lab, Elena turned back to her workstation. She pulled up the Zephyrian message one more time and read it slowly. The words seemed to glow on the screen, carrying a weight that made her chest feel tight. She thought about Earth, so far away from this dead world. She thought about the billions of people living their lives, completely unaware that ancient civilizations had left warnings about them scattered across the galaxy. People going to work, raising families, and dreaming about the future. What were they guarding? What could be so dangerous that civilizations thousands of years older and more advanced than humans would fear it? Elena began her translation work again, checking every symbol and every word. But deep down, she already knew the truth. The warnings were real, and whatever humanity was supposed to be guarding, it was still out there, waiting. Commander Lisa Parker sat in the secure briefing room deep beneath the Pentagon, staring at the classified files spread across the metal table. 3 weeks had passed since Dr. Martinez's discovery, and the Galactic Archaeological Council had quietly assembled a team to investigate the warnings about Earth. Lisa was chosen to lead the human side of the investigation because of her security clearance and her experience with alien contact protocols. At 38, she had spent most of her career dealing with humanity's first encounters with other species in the galaxy. But nothing had prepared her for this. "The pattern is consistent across all 17 civilizations," she said to the small group gathered around the table. "Every single warning mentions specific coordinates, not just Earth in general." Dr. Ben Murphy, a quantum physicist from MIT, leaned forward to examine the data. "These coordinates don't point to any location on Earth's surface. They're pointing straight down into the planet itself." "How far down?" asked Agent Ryan Kelly, a veteran intelligence officer who had been pulled into the investigation. Ben checked his calculations again. "Approximately 2,000 kilometers beneath the surface. That puts it in the lower mantle, well below the deepest point humans have ever drilled." Lisa pulled up a holographic display showing Earth's cross-section. A red dot appeared deep within the planet, pulsing like a heartbeat. Whatever they're talking about, it's been down there for a very long time. Meanwhile, on the other side of the galaxy, Dr. Kethvar of the Altarian Science Collective was conducting his own research into human behavior. His 4-armed body moved gracefully around his laboratory as he analyzed centuries of human historical data. The Altarians had been studying humans from a distance for over 300 years, ever since first contact had been established. They found human psychology fascinating and often unpredictable compared to other species in the galaxy. "Curious," Kethvar muttered to himself as he reviewed the data streams. His large, dark eyes focused on patterns that would be invisible to most beings. Human aggression levels are significantly lower than expected for a species with their technological capabilities. He pulled up comparative analyses of other species at similar stages of development. Most civilizations went through a period of extreme violence and conquest when they first achieved space travel. Humans had too, but not to the extent that should have been expected. It's as if something is suppressing their natural aggressive instincts. He noted in his research log. On the crystalline world of Nexus Prime, scholar Zixthal was reaching similar conclusions. The crystalline being's translucent body hummed with harmonic frequencies as it processed vast amounts of data about human expansion patterns. Unlike most species, humans tended to establish colonies in specific patterns that seemed random, but actually followed subtle geometric arrangements. When Zixthal mapped these patterns, they formed a rough sphere around Earth, as if humans were unconsciously creating a protective barrier around their homeworld. They guard without knowing they guard. Zixthal resonated to its research partner. Most intriguing behavior for a species that claims to be driven by exploration and profit. Back on Earth, geologist Danny Roberts was having trouble sleeping. For the past month, his seismic monitoring equipment had been detecting unusual vibrations deep beneath the Earth's surface. The readings didn't match any known geological phenomena. Danny worked for the United States Geological Survey and had been studying earthquakes and tectonic activity for 15 years. He knew every type of seismic signature, from volcanic eruptions to underground nuclear tests. But these readings were different. The vibrations seemed to originate from the exact coordinates that Commander Parker's team had identified. They weren't random either. They followed a pattern, almost like a heartbeat or breathing rhythm. "It's like something down there is alive," Benny told his colleague, Dr. Katie Chun, as they reviewed the data in their Denver laboratory. Katie was a specialist in geological anomalies and had been brought in to help analyze the strange readings. She had grown up in California and was used to earthquake activity, but these signals were unlike anything she had ever seen. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a particular waveform on the screen. "These aren't natural geological movements. The frequency is too regular, too organized." Danny nodded grimly. "It's artificial. Something made by intelligence, not nature." Katie pulled up additional data from seismic stations around the world. "The signals are getting stronger. Whatever's down there, it's becoming more active." As they worked, Katie began to notice something else strange. Every time she looked at the seismic data, she felt an odd sensation, like someone was watching her. The feeling was strongest when she focused on the deepest readings, the ones coming from 2,000 kilometers down. "Danny, do you ever feel like this data is aware of us somehow?" Danny paused in his work and looked at her carefully. "You feel it too? I thought I was going crazy. Every time I analyze these readings, I get this feeling like something is looking back at me." Unknown to them, similar reactions were occurring in sensitive individuals around the world. People with no connection to each other, no knowledge of the investigation, were beginning to experience strange dreams and waking visions. In Tokyo, a night security guard named Hiroshi started having dreams about vast, dark spaces deep underground. In London, a librarian named Margaret found herself unconsciously drawing geometric patterns that matched the human colony arrangements. Scholar Zixthal had identified Dr. Martinez, still working on the archaeological station orbiting the dead. Zephyrian World was experiencing the strongest reactions of all. Her dreams were filled with images of ancient chambers carved from living rock, filled with technology that seemed to blend organic and mechanical elements. In her dreams, she walked through corridors that stretched for miles underground, past walls covered in symbols from dozens of different civilizations. At the center of it all was a massive chamber containing something that her dreaming mind couldn't quite focus on. The dreams always ended the same way. A voice, speaking in a language she somehow understood despite never hearing it before, would whisper, The watchers must not sleep. The guardian must not wake. Elena would jolt awake, her heart pounding and her clothes soaked with sweat. Each time, the dreams felt more real, more urgent. She began to suspect that the investigation itself was somehow triggering whatever lay beneath. Earth. The more they learned about the warnings, the more active the deep signals became. It was as if their attention was disturbing something that had been dormant for millennia. Commander, Parker received Elena's report about the dreams with growing concern. Similar reports were coming in from other members of the investigation team. People were dreaming about underground chambers, ancient technology, and warnings in dead languages. The investigation was revealing more than just historical warnings. It was awakening something that had been sleeping beneath their feet for longer than human civilization had existed. The first alien ships appeared at the edge of the solar system on a Tuesday morning. Admiral Nicole Foster was drinking her coffee in the Space Command headquarters when the alert came through. 3 Hegemony Council vessels had dropped out of faster-than-light travel near Pluto and were requesting permission to conduct routine scientific observations. Nicole had been expecting this. Ever since word of the archaeological discovery had leaked through official channels, alien governments had been asking pointed questions about Earth. Now they were coming to see for themselves. How many ships are we tracking now? She asked. Her aide, Lieutenant Colonel Amy Watson. Amy checked her datapad. 12 vessels from 6 different species, Admiral, all claiming scientific purposes. The Void Seekers arrived this morning with 2 heavy cruisers. They're saying something about ancient debts and cosmic balance. Nicole frowned. The Void Seekers were an old and mysterious race that rarely involved themselves in galactic politics. For them to show up meant this situation was more serious. And anyone had realized, what's our defensive posture? All orbital platforms are on alert. And we've moved the 3rd Fleet to defensive positions around Earth and Mars. But Admiral, if even half these ships decide to get aggressive, we're outnumbered. 3-1. On Earth's surface, Dr. Katie Chun was making discoveries that changed everything they thought they knew about the human species. Working in a secure laboratory beneath the Colorado mountains, she had been analyzing blood samples from people who reported the strange dreams and visions. What she found was impossible to explain. Look at this, she said to Dr. Ben Murphy, who had been brought in to help with the analysis. These people all share certain genetic markers that don't appear in the general population. Ben studied the genetic sequences on the screen. As a quantum physicist, genetics wasn't his specialty, but even he could see the patterns Katie was highlighting. How many people carry these markers? That's what's so strange, Katie replied. It's not random. The markers appear most strongly in people who work in defense, government security, and scientific research. It's like these genetic traits are somehow connected to protective behaviors. She pulled up a world map showing the locations of people who carried the markers. Red dots appeared across all continents, but they weren't evenly distributed. They clustered around military bases, research facilities, and government centers. Ben, look at this pattern. These people have unconsciously positioned themselves in jobs where they can protect Earth. It's like their genetics are driving them to become guardians without them even knowing it. Meanwhile, Agent Ryan Kelly was experiencing his own unsettling revelations. He had worked for various government agencies for 23 years, always feeling driven to take assignments that involved protecting national security. He had assumed it was just his personality, his sense of duty. But now, looking back at his career choices, he saw a different pattern. Every major decision he had made, from joining the military to switching to intelligence work to volunteering for the most dangerous assignments, had been motivated by an overwhelming need to protect Earth from threats he couldn't name. The feeling had always been there, just beneath the surface of his conscious mind. A constant awareness that something terrible would happen if he didn't stay vigilant, if he didn't keep fighting to keep Earth safe. "I've been having the dreams too," he told Commander Parker during their secure video conference. "Every night. For the past 2 weeks. I see massive underground chambers filled with technology I don't recognize. And there's always this feeling that something is watching me, something ancient and patient." Lisa nodded grimly. "You're not alone. We've identified over 3,000 people worldwide who are experiencing similar symptoms. All of them carry the genetic markers Katie discovered. All of them work in positions related to Earth's defense or security. The investigation had revealed that humanity had been unconsciously organizing itself into a protective network for generations. People with the right genetic markers were drawn to careers in the military, intelligence services, scientific research, and government security. They didn't know why they felt compelled to protect Earth, but the drive was so strong that it shaped their entire lives. Dr. Elena Martinez was still on the archaeological station, but her condition was getting worse. The dreams came every time she closed her eyes now, and she was starting to see the underground chambers even when she was awake. The visions were becoming so vivid that she could describe the layout of corridors and rooms that existed 2,000 kilometers beneath Earth's surface. "The technology down there isn't human," she reported to the investigation team. "But it's not entirely alien either. It's like someone took elements from dozens of different civilizations and combined them into something new." She paused, struggling to find words for what she was seeing in her visions. "I think the chamber was built by the civilizations that left the warnings. They knew what was down there, and they built containment systems to keep it dormant. Zephyrians, the Kelthani, the Nexari, they all contributed to the construction before their civilizations fell." Captain Jake Sullivan, who had been monitoring Elena's condition, was becoming increasingly worried. "Elena, you need to get some rest. These visions are getting stronger every day." "I can't rest, Jake. Every time I try to sleep, I see more. And lately, I've been sensing something else down there. Something that's becoming aware of our investigation." The seismic activity that Danny Roberts had been monitoring was increasing daily. The rhythmic vibrations from deep within Earth were growing stronger and more frequent. But more troubling was the fact that the patterns were changing, becoming more complex. "It's like it's trying to communicate," Danny told Katie during one of their late-night analysis sessions. "The frequency shifts are too organized to be random. Someone or something is sending signals from 2,000 kilometers down." Katie had been studying the genetic data around the clock, and she was beginning to understand the horrible truth. "Danny, what if the people carrying these genetic markers aren't just randomly protective? What if they're specifically designed to be guardians? Designed by who? By whatever is down there. What if it chose certain human bloodlines and modified them over thousands of generations to create the perfect watchers? People who would be compelled to protect Earth without understanding why." The implications were terrifying. If Katie was right, then a significant portion of humanity had been unknowingly bred to serve as guardians for something buried beneath their planet. Their protective instincts, their career choices, their willingness to sacrifice for Earth's security, none of it was truly their own choice. Above Earth, the alien ships continued to arrive. Each new vessel brought representatives from civilizations that claimed they needed to verify the security of the containment or ensure the Guardians remained vigilant. But Admiral Foster could see the truth in their positioning and weapon readiness. They weren't here to help. They were here to make sure that whatever was buried beneath Earth stayed buried. And if humanity failed in its guardian duties, the alien fleets were prepared to take more direct action. The Watchers were being watched, and time was running out to understand what they were really protecting the galaxy from. The nightmares began on the same night across 6 continents. In New York, Police officer Mike Johnson woke up screaming about vast underground spaces filled with pulsing light. In Moscow, scientist Anna Petrov found herself drawing complex symbols she had never seen before. In Sydney, military engineer Tom Fletcher couldn't stop his hands from shaking after dreaming about ancient machinery coming to life. The dreams were always the same. Massive chambers carved from living rock, filled with technology that seemed to breathe and pulse with its own heartbeat. At the center of it all was something so large and ancient that the dreaming minds couldn't fully comprehend it. But they all heard the same voice, speaking in words that bypassed language and went straight to understanding. If we wake, all ends. Dr. Katie Chun was monitoring the reports from her laboratory in Colorado when the first technological failures began. Electronic equipment within 50 miles of the major genetic marker clusters started malfunctioning in ways that made no scientific sense. "It's not electromagnetic interference," she explained to Commander Parker over a secure video link that kept cutting out with static. "The failures are too specific, too organized. Computers are displaying text in languages that died out thousands of years ago. Quantum processors are showing calculation results that shouldn't be possible." In Washington, D.C., Agent Ryan Kelly was dealing with his own equipment problems. His secure communication devices had started receiving messages that weren't being sent by anyone on Earth. The text appeared in ancient Zephyrian script, which he somehow found himself able to read despite never studying the language. "The Guardians grow restless," one message read. "The ancient compact weakens. The sleeper stirs." Ryan forwarded the messages to the investigation team, but each transmission seemed to cause more electronic failures throughout the governments. Secure networks. It was as if the mere act of observing these communications was making them stronger. Admiral Nicole Foster was dealing with a crisis that grew worse by the hour. The alien fleets orbiting Earth had grown to 37 ships, from 12 different species. More troubling, they had begun forming defensive formations around specific points above Earth's surface. "They're positioning themselves over the locations where our people with genetic markers are concentrated," reported Colonel Amy Watson during the morning briefing. "It's like they know exactly where our natural guardians are located." Nicole studied the tactical display showing both the alien ships and the locations of people experiencing the strongest symptoms. The patterns matched perfectly. Every major concentration of genetically marked humans had alien vessels hovering directly overhead. "They're not here to invade," Nicole realized. "They're here to contain us. If something goes wrong, if whatever is down there wakes up, they're positioned to eliminate our guardian population immediately." The seismic activity deep beneath Earth was becoming impossible to ignore. Danny Roberts had expanded his monitoring network to include every seismic station on the planet, and the results were terrifying. The rhythmic pulses from 2,000 kilometers down were now strong enough to be felt by sensitive equipment on the surface. "It's not just getting stronger," Danny reported to the emergency session of the investigation team. "The pattern is changing. The pulses are becoming more complex, more organized. It's like it's trying to establish some kind of communication protocol." Dr. Ben Murphy had been analyzing the quantum effects of the deep pulses and had made a discovery that kept him awake for 3 straight nights. "The entity down there exists partially outside normal spacetime," he explained, his voice hoarse from exhaustion. That's how the ancient civilizations could detect it across vast distances and time periods. It's not fully contained by the normal rules of physics. The implications were staggering. If the entity could influence events across both space and time, then its awakening wouldn't just affect Earth, or even the current time period. It could potentially unravel reality across multiple star systems and throughout history. Dr. Elena Martinez, still on the archaeological station, was no longer sleeping at all. The visions came constantly now, whether her eyes were open or closed. She could see the deep chambers as clearly as if she were standing in them, could feel the ancient machinery responding to the increased attention from the surface. It knows. "We're investigating," she reported during one of her increasingly erratic communications with Earth. "Every time we discover something new about it, it becomes more aware of us. The investigation itself is causing it to wake up." She paused, her voice dropping to a whisper. "And I think it's been influencing us all along. Not just the people with the genetic markers. All of us. Every decision we've made that led to this discovery, every choice that brought us to this point, it's been guiding us here." The most disturbing reports were coming from the genetically marked individuals themselves. People like Ryan Kelly, who had spent their entire careers feeling compelled to protect Earth, were beginning to understand that their sense of duty might not be entirely their own. Sarah Williams, a NASA security specialist, found herself standing outside her apartment building at 3 a.m, staring up at the stars with tears streaming down her face. She couldn't remember leaving her bed, but she knew with absolute certainty that something terrible was coming, and that she had to be ready to stop it. "I've been preparing my whole life for something I didn't understand," she told her supervisor. The next morning, every training course, every security clearance, every late night working on projects I thought were routine, it was all building toward this moment. Similar revelations were occurring worldwide. Military officers found themselves unconsciously repositioning troops and equipment. Scientists discovered they had been developing technologies that seemed useless until now, but were perfectly suited for the current crisis. Government officials realized they had been creating policies and procedures that only made sense as preparation for humanity's role as planetary guardians. The technological failures were spreading beyond just the areas with high concentrations of genetic markers. Quantum computers around the world began displaying the same message simultaneously, coordinates pointing to specific locations on Earth's surface, along with countdown timers that were rapidly approaching zero. Dr. Katie Chun was working frantically to understand what the countdown meant when her own equipment began showing impossible readings. The genetic markers weren't just appearing in people. They were beginning to appear in the electronic systems themselves, as if the technology was being influenced by the same force that had shaped certain human bloodlines. "It's not just controlling people," she realized with growing horror. "It's controlling our technology too. Our entire technological civilization might have been guided to develop in ways that serve its purposes as a guardian system." As the countdown timers reached their final hours, the alien fleets above Earth began charging their weapons. The message was clear. If humanity failed to maintain control of whatever was beneath their planet, the alien civilizations were prepared to ensure it never woke up, even if that meant destroying Earth itself. The ancient warnings were proving prophetic. Humanity did guard something worse than themselves. And now, that something was beginning to stir. The countdown reached zero at exactly 3:47 a.m. Eastern Time. Around the world, every piece of electronic equipment connected to the investigation stopped working for 37 seconds. When the systems came back online, they displayed a single message in perfect English. "The chamber is open. Descend." Dr. Katie Chun was the first to understand what had happened. The coordinates that had been appearing on quantum computers for weeks now showed a clear path downward through the Earth's crust, as if something had created a tunnel from the surface to the deep chamber that housed whatever humanity had been guarding. "It's not just coordinates anymore," she reported to Commander Parker in an emergency session. "It's an invitation, or maybe a command." Within hours, a joint expedition was organized. Representatives from Earth's governments, the alien fleets, and the investigation team would descend together to finally see what lay 2,000 kilometers beneath their feet. The technology to make such a journey had appeared overnight. downloaded directly into Earth's manufacturing systems by unknown means. Colonel Amy Watson led the military contingent of 12 soldiers, all of whom carried the genetic markers that made them natural guardians. Dr. Ben Murphy represented the scientific team, along with Elena Martinez, who had finally returned from the archaeological station. Agent Ryan Kelly came as an intelligence observer, though he admitted he felt more like he was being called home and sent on a mission. The alien delegation included Dr. Kethvar from the Altarian Science Collective, a towering hegemony council warrior named Vexara, and 3 other representatives from species that had been studying humanity for centuries. The descent vehicle was unlike any technology Earth had ever produced. It moved through solid rock as easily as air, creating a perfect tunnel behind it that remained stable and breathable. The journey took 6 hours, during which none of the team members spoke. They all felt the same overwhelming sense of approaching, something vast and ancient that had been waiting for this moment. When they finally reached the chamber, even the alien delegates fell silent in awe. The space was enormous, stretching beyond the reach of their lights in every direction. The walls were covered in symbols and technology from dozens of different civilizations, all flowing together in patterns that somehow made perfect sense despite being completely alien to human understanding. But it was the center of the chamber that took their breath away. The entity was beautiful and terrible at the same time. It existed as both solid matter and flowing energy, constantly shifting between forms that the human mind could barely process. It was clearly alive, but alive in a way that transcended normal biology. Its consciousness filled the entire chamber, making everyone present feel like tiny children in the presence of something infinitely old and wise. When it spoke, its voice came from everywhere at once, resonating through both sound and direct thought transfer. "You have come at last, young guardians. We have been waiting." Elena stepped forward, her training as an archaeologist helping her overcome her fear. "You're the entity that the ancient civilizations warned about?" "Warned?" The entity's form shifted, and somehow they could sense amusement in its presence. "They did not warn about us. They acknowledged us. They understood what you are only now learning." Dr. Kethvar, his 4 arms trembling slightly, asked the question they were all thinking. "What are you?" "We are what remains when a universe grows too old, when the space between stars becomes too vast, when the energy that holds reality together begins to fade. We are the end of all things, and the beginning of what comes after." The entity's form became more stable, more comprehensible to their minds. "Long ago, when your galaxy was young, we chose to sleep rather than consume the growing civilizations around us. Our very existence draws energy from the fabric of space-time itself. If we remain fully awake, entire star systems would collapse into nothing." Ben Murphy found his voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. "Why Earth? Why did you choose to sleep here?" "Because your species was unique," the entity replied. "Most civilizations, when they encounter us, either flee in terror or attempt to worship us as gods. But early humans, primitive as they were, simply accepted our presence and continued with their lives. You were the first species we found that could coexist with incomprehensible cosmic forces without losing your sanity." Ryan Kelly felt a sudden understanding wash over him. "The genetic markers. You've been influencing human evolution to create guardians." "Not creating," the entity corrected. "Encouraging. We enhance the traits that already existed in your species. Your natural tendency to protect, to sacrifice for others, to stand guard against threats you cannot fully understand. We simply made those traits stronger in certain bloodlines." Colonel Watson looked around at the incredible technology filling the chamber. "All of this was built by the civilizations that found you before?" "Yes, the Zephyrians, the Kelthani, the Nexari, and many others. Each contributed to the containment systems before their civilizations ended. They understood that our sleep was necessary for the continued existence of life in this galaxy. Their warnings were not threats. They were instructions for future civilizations on how to maintain the vigil. Vexara, the hegemony warrior, spoke for the first time since entering the chamber. The fleets above Earth, they came because they detected signs of your awakening. As they should, the entity acknowledged. If we fully wake, if the containment fails, this entire region of space will be consumed. Your peoples above are prepared to destroy this planet rather than risk that outcome. Elena felt a chill of understanding. But you're already partially awake. Our investigation, our attention to the warnings, that's what's been causing you to stir. Indeed, knowledge has power, young archaeologist. The more you learned about us, the more aware we became. It is an unfortunate side effect of consciousness that exists across multiple dimensions of space and time. Dr. Kethfer stepped closer, his scientific curiosity overcoming his fear. Are there others like you? Other sleeping entities? Many others, scattered throughout the galaxy, each guarded by species that developed the necessary psychological defenses. The crystalline beings of Nexus Prime guard one of our siblings. The silicon-based life forms of the Outer Rim protect another. You humans are not alone in this responsibility. The entity's presence shifted, becoming somehow more focused, more urgent. But now you face a choice that will determine not only Earth's future, but the fate of all guardian species in this galaxy. Ryan felt his breath catch. What kind of choice? We can relocate ourselves to uninhabited space, far from any civilized worlds. This would free humanity from the guardian responsibility, but it would also leave you vulnerable to other cosmic threats that we have been unconsciously protecting you from. Or we can return to our deep sleep with humanity's willing consent, to continue the vigil, and in return grant your species knowledge and capabilities that will ensure your survival and prosperity for millions of years. The chamber fell silent, except for the soft humming of ancient machinery. Above them, 37 alien warships waited for an answer that would shape the future of the galaxy. Colonel Watson looked at her team, then at the alien delegates, and finally at the entity itself. How long do we have to decide? The choice must be made now, the entity replied. Our partial awakening is already causing instabilities in local spacetime. We cannot remain in this state much longer without risking the very thing we have slept to prevent. The fate of humanity, and possibly the entire galaxy, hung in the balance of a decision that would define what it truly meant to be human. Major Pete Collins had been quiet throughout the descent and the entity's revelations, but now he stepped forward. As the ranking military officer present, he understood that someone had to speak for humanity, and that decision would echo through history for generations to come. Before we answer, Pete said, his voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment, we need to understand what we're really choosing between. The entity's form shifted, becoming more focused on the small group of humans standing before it. Speak your questions, Guardian. We will answer truthfully. Elena moved to stand beside Pete. As the archaeologist who had discovered the warnings, she felt responsible for bringing humanity to this moment. If we choose to remain as guardians, what exactly would that mean for our people? Your species would continue to evolve along the path we have gently guided for millennia, the entity explained. The genetic markers that create natural protectors would become more common. Your technology would advance in ways that serve both exploration and defense. Most importantly, you would gain conscious knowledge of your role instead of acting purely on instinct. Dr. Ben Murphy stepped closer, his scientific mind working through the implications. And if we choose freedom from this responsibility, we would relocate to the empty spaces between galaxies, far from any inhabited worlds. Humanity would be free to develop according to its own nature, without our influence. But you would also lose the protection that our presence provides against other cosmic threats. There are entities in the universe far less benevolent than ourselves. Colonel Watson felt a chill at those words. What kind of other threats? Devourers that consume entire civilizations for sustenance. Reality storms that can erase star systems from existence. Ancient machines left behind by dead gods that still carry out their creator's final commands to end all life. Our sleeping presence has kept such things away from this region of space. Agent Ryan Kelly looked around at the incredible technology covering the chamber walls. The knowledge you mentioned, what would humanity gain? Understanding of faster-than-light travel that doesn't require the crude engines your current ships use. Medical knowledge that would extend human lifespans by thousands of years. Energy sources that could power your civilization for millions of years without depleting any resources. And most importantly, the ability to detect and guard against the cosmic threats that would otherwise destroy you. Vexara, the hegemony warrior, spoke up from the alien delegation. And what of the other species? How would humanity's choice affect the rest of the galaxy? If humanity chooses to remain guardians, the compact between guardian species would be strengthened. All guardian civilizations would share knowledge and protection. If humanity chooses freedom, the burden on other guardian species would increase, and some may not be strong enough to bear the additional responsibility. Dr. Kethfer added his own concern. There are 17 known guardian species currently active. If even one fails in their duty, it could trigger a cascade effect that awakens all the sleeping entities simultaneously. The implications were staggering. Humanity's choice wouldn't just affect Earth. It could determine the survival of the entire galaxy. Pete looked at each member of the human delegation. Elena nodded slightly, understanding in her eyes. Ben appeared thoughtful but resolute. Ryan and Amy both had the determined expression of soldiers, ready to accept whatever duty was required. We need a moment to discuss this among ourselves, Pete said. The entity's presence withdrew slightly, giving them privacy while the alien delegates waited in respectful silence. This isn't really a choice, is it? Ryan said quietly. If we walk away from this responsibility, we're potentially dooming billions of other beings across the galaxy. Elena shook her head. But we can't make this decision for all of humanity. This affects every person on Earth, every future generation. Actually, Amy interjected, I think humans have already been making this choice for thousands of years. Every person who felt compelled to join the military, to work in security, to dedicate their lives to protecting others, they were all unconsciously choosing to be guardians. Ben nodded slowly. The genetic markers didn't create the protective instinct. They just enhanced what was already the best part of human nature. The willingness to sacrifice for others, to stand guard against threats, even when we don't fully understand them. Pete felt the weight of decision settling on his shoulders. So we're not choosing between freedom and responsibility. We're choosing between conscious guardianship and unconscious guardianship. Either way, humans will always be protectors, Elena agreed. It's who we are at our core. The question is, whether we do it with full knowledge and support, or whether we stumble through it blindly like we have been. Ryan smiled grimly. When you put it that way, the choice becomes obvious. Pete turned back to face the entity. We've made our decision. The ancient being's presence intensified, filling the chamber with anticipation. Above them, 37. Alien ships waited for the signal that would determine whether they would withdraw or prepare for the unthinkable task of destroying Earth. Humanity chooses to remain as guardians, Pete announced, his voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. We choose conscious knowledge of our responsibility and willing partnership with the other guardian species. The entity's form brightened, and somehow they could all sense relief and approval radiating from its ancient consciousness. You choose wisely, young guardians. Your species has always possessed the courage to face the unknown. Now you will have the knowledge to face it effectively. The technology throughout the chamber began to pulse with new energy. Streams of information flowed directly into the minds of the human delegation, not overwhelming them, but planting seeds of knowledge that would grow and develop over time. Elena gasped as she suddenly understood the true history of dozens of civilizations, their rise and fall, their contributions to the Guardian network. Ben felt new scientific principles settling into his mind, concepts that would revolutionize human technology. Ryan and Amy received tactical knowledge about cosmic threats and the methods used to defend against them. The transition will take time, the entity explained. Your people will gradually develop the enhanced genetic markers. Your technology will advance steadily rather than all at once. But humanity will never again face cosmic threats without understanding what they are fighting. Above them, the alien fleets began powering down their weapons and sending signals of congratulation to Earth. The crisis had passed, but humanity's real work was just beginning. Dr. Kethfer approached Pete with something like respect in his alien features. Welcome to the Guardian Combat, humans. Your species has proven itself worthy of standing alongside the oldest protectors in the galaxy. As they prepared to return to the surface, Elena looked back at the entity one last time. Will we see you again? We will return to our deep sleep, it replied. But part of our consciousness will always remain connected to our guardians. When you need guidance, you will know how to reach us. And when the time comes for humanity to help establish new guardian species, we will help you teach them as others taught you. The ascent to Earth's surface took 6 hours, but when they emerged, they found a world that had already begun to change. People with the genetic markers worldwide reported feeling a new sense of purpose and understanding. Scientists discovered that research projects they had been struggling with for years suddenly made perfect sense. Military personnel found themselves developing new strategies for threats they had never imagined. Humanity had accepted its role as guardians of the galaxy, and in doing so, had taken the first step toward becoming something greater than they had ever dreamed possible.